Now, perhaps you've been in a situation where you've been ghosted. Maybe that's made you feel like you're abandoned. How many of you have been in the situation whereby you've been told that for whatever reason, you can never have what it is that you desire, or it just seems impossible because of all these obstacles that are racked up against you? And remember, in those sorts of circumstances where we feel that all the obstacles and the circumstances themselves are getting on top of us, you have to remember that life isn't punishing you in that moment, although it does feel like a punishment. But it is actually mirroring the identity that you forgot you can change. That's right. You're not stuck in this situation. And today I'm going to share with you an incredible case study of a client of mine who was gifted 2 labels that basically wrote her fate and landed her in a very painful situation for, well over like decades of her life, where she couldn't have been further away from the very dreams that she had wanted, from her very desires. And it held her back until she stopped answering to them. Are you curious? I'm going to share everything in this video, so stay with me, because this is one of the most incredible stories. I've wanted to share it for a while, and I've been holding off, and you'll understand why when I get to the end of it. But just imagine, as I know like many of you have been there, I know I've been there too. You're being ghosted by a specific person, cut off, after you've had the most intensive get together, whereby you really, really thought that this person was the one, only to then be dismissed without a fight, as though you didn't even matter, just faded out and ignored. So imagine going through that, going through the traumatic childhood events, and then being given diagnoses that basically tells you you can't have the very thing that you desire most in the world. I'd say this is one of those cases that's going to blow your mind, because it's going to show you how powerful you truly are. And once we rewrote the identity that was creating this reality, this stagnancy, this pain in her life, we installed it deeply into her subconscious, her entire body and her world recalibrated. And I'm going to show you guys, as I always do, exactly what we did. And I'm going to break it down so that you can all do it too, because you can all do it as well. In this video, you're going to see the 3 main sentences that we use to collapse her assumptions. I'm going to take you through a bit of the trance method that I took her through, that helped to change her state from someone who was angry and resentful, someone who couldn't occupy the wish fulfilled because she was carrying so much of this anger and frustration. I'm going to take you through that, because I know that some of you are carrying the resentment and the anger in your heart. Be honest. Those of you who are like in the shower having those inner conversations where you're telling whoever it is, any specific person it might be, you're telling them off. How many of you are doing that? We'll sort it all out so that you can release some of that resentment that's holding you back. And we're going to break down everything, like I say, to show you how she got her specific person back against all odds. So stay until the end, and I'll give you the challenge questions as well that we used to shift her states, so that all of you can shift yours whilst you're watching. Yes, it's all here. It's all here, freely available to you guys. And I just wanted to say as well, thank you so much for your continuous support. I love it when we see these messages from people going, oh yeah, who else likes the video before they've even watched it? I love your faith in me. Many of you have been donating to the channel as well. I was overwhelmed by that. It's not something I expected. And I just wanted to give a moment to say thank you, and I am grateful, and I'm just overwhelmed by your love and your generosity and support, because we have the most amazing community here. People have said to me that this channel feels like a free coaching session, and I'm happy to keep it that way for you and never to put membership on this channel. This is what has been getting you guys so much success. Oh my God. And I know it's because I put myself in the state of abundance. Like I told you, I was telling the other coaches as well, because we have our own little group chats and stuff together. It's like, I'm going to prove it to you. You can be in the state of abundance. You can give it all away. You can always be abundant. These success stories are rolling in. Some of them updates as well, not full-blown successes, but to me, I consider a success, because when you've changed your state, the rest is inevitable. So, you know, I'm getting comments from my clients, obviously on my WhatsApp and my Telegram. We're getting people on our Discord community, updating, messaging, posting in the success stories chat room, sharing in our live Q&As. I've got you guys as well in the comment section sharing some incredible things. So keep on sharing it, guys, because I'm going to screenshot as many. I mean, this is just a fragment of what I was receiving. Even as I was preparing to film, my phone was just going off with more messages, and some clients I haven't spoken to in ages coming back to me as well. One of them's currently recording a voice note. You know who you are, darling. So I'm really excited to listen to that. You guys are doing so well. I deal with all sorts of people from all walks of life. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you've had a terrible upbringing or whether you've had a privileged one. I've got celebrity clients. I've got high profile individuals. I've got everyday people like you and I. And no one is immune to this. The law works for all of us, and we all go through really, really hard times. So let's come together, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, share your success, because each of you are given a voice. And I've got my website as well with all your success stories. Have you guys been reading it? I've been sharing in my daily community posts, actually, trying to encourage you guys to go there and have a read to remind yourself of how powerful you are. But this case study is going to really blow your mind. And it was, what a beautiful way to start my sort of, well, for my week. It was to start this week with such a beautiful story. So are you ready? Are you ready? Sit back, relax, grab yourself a hot drink. Because I tell you, there was stuff that she had achieved in her life that made me question even a few things about myself. Maybe I even imposed some limitations on myself in some ways subconsciously. You see, I learned from you guys as well. You know, I don't sit there pretending to know it all, but it's all going to be revealed here. So have you got your hot drink handy? I hope so. Cheers, everybody. Here's to your success. Here's to your achievements. Here's to celebrating many milestones together. And big kitty cat mugs and lovely autumnal warmth. This video is going to be packed to the brim with juicy gems. You know it. So you better be taking some notes. Let it sink in. Write it down in the comments section. And let's begin. So as you know, I always do my utmost to protect the identities of my clients. So I'm going to give her a fake name, but I've realized it's so much easier to refer to them by a name. So I'm going to call her Dawn to protect her identity. And Dawn is the most incredible, resilient individual I have had the honor of working with. Now, ever since, and I knew I knew she had the ability. She was strong-minded, because when I'd met her, she told me her story, as many of my clients do. And she had had big desires, big dreams for herself since her 20s to work in the creative field of film and documentary. And it was her strong, ambitious mindset that made her not only achieve it, but to get to a really high level in her profession, which in that sort of profession is not easy to achieve. So as you can see on the outside, she's manifested the most incredible thing that many people will never get to manifest. She has got a brilliant career behind her. She's got a really strong mindset. However, underneath that strength and that ambition was a lot of trauma. So her father had, I'm going to say he had narcissistic tendencies, because, you know, I'm not one to label people and stick them there, but he exhibited narcissistic tendencies and made her feel worthless because of that projection, made her work hard for love and affection, made her feel punished when she didn't behave accordingly. And unfortunately, her mother didn't really get involved, didn't give her any protection, essentially ignored her pain. So she grew up being made to feel extremely isolated and extremely fearful to be alone. She was made to believe that she was too much, that she was too unstable, that she was unworthy, and that she was just never going to measure up in any way. And of course, that shaped her identity. And it was that identity that became the foundation for all of her relationships. So listen closely. There's a reason I'm explaining all of this to you. Now, Dawn had, as I said, she had many of the same dreams that a lot of us have, right? To meet someone special, someone who loves her as much as she loves him, you know, someone that she could share a life with, someone who she could rely on, made her feel special, safe, nurtured. And she had met partner after partner. She had no problem meeting people, but it was always the same sort of story repeating itself. Remember, same person, different face. So one of her relationships did last over a decade. But she'd said to me how she had essentially settled with him. He didn't ignite a fire in her. You know, he was a nice man. He was dedicated, but he was hugely religious and he put his family above her. So it did have some dysfunction to it. And she desperately wanted connection. And she stuck around because of that desperation, stuck around for much longer than she should have. Because I know many people do wonder, don't they, if they have these underlying assumptions. Why is it I was married for 15 years? Why is it I managed to have this relationship? But it's always the same story, especially for her, like she was settling. Now, he pulls away and she would still chase, despite the fact that she wasn't really that emotionally invested. But that is just giving you an idea to the degree of how fearful she was. Now, the next bit is what really sealed her fate in a lot of this and made things so much worse. So obviously, she takes responsibility. She is very clued up. She is very self-aware. She takes responsibility for the fact that perhaps her past traumas are affecting her relationships. So she seeks out a psychiatrist to help her. And this psychiatrist diagnoses her with borderline personality disorder. See, this was one of the labels she was gifted. Now, there's quite a few people that I have had the pleasure of working with lately who have been given similar labels. And unfortunately, when you're given that sort of a label, particularly from someone who is in a position of authority, right? Psychiatrist, doctor, okay, they've told me this, it must be true. It becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that moment, right? So, because for many people who are given that diagnosis, and how many of you have come across that sort of diagnosis or some diagnosis of some type that has essentially told you you can't have what you want? Because she desperately wanted a healthy relationship, but it's been known that people with BPD are not likely to have healthy relationships. And that's how she felt. She was just like, oh my God, okay, this is it. What's the point, right? And so she did notice, as much as she still tried, she was dedicated to her cause of meeting someone. She dated and she dated, but she ended up in one dysfunctional, meaningless fling after another. In fact, after her diagnosis, things got so much worse for her. And she would find herself getting into situations and dates, meeting people that she'd like, making a connection, only to then be ghosted or ditched or replaced. A common theme for her was that they wouldn't make any effort. It just always seemed to be that she was doing it all. It was very one-sided. And so it was just this constant, consistent pattern functioning over and over again. She was in such a scarcity mindset when it came to relationships, and it was just destroying every connection that she ever had. As it states in scripture, Matthew 13, I believe, for whoever has, to him more will be given, but whoever does not have, even what little he has will be taken away. How many of you have heard of that? That's not quoted verbatim, but how many of you have come across that? And it sounds pretty cruel, doesn't it? But essentially, reality will always multiply what is already accepted by you. And so her scarcity assumptions around relationships and this diagnosis meant that reality was going to mirror more and more. And of course, it was doing that. Now, this is the moment where things start to shift and change for her. And what's really curious about this is that many people that I've worked with have been subconsciously doing this, have told me at some point they have done this. Some of you have done it actually based on watching Joseph and myself at our videos and how we manifested each other. But some of you have just done this intuitively. You see, you've been doing this all your life. So despite the fact that obviously Dawn's love life was really chaotic at this point and really getting her down, she still had her dreams and her fantasies about her ideal guy. And she decided to create a list. Like I say, many of you have done this inadvertently. And this is what Joseph did to manifest, well, me, although he didn't know it was me at the time. But a list of her ideal person with the traits of what he would be like. And it really is such a powerful method, and it's so simple, and it worked for her, because a few months later, on the dating apps, of course, she meets, and I'm going to call her SP Alan. Again, not his real name to protect identity, but she meets Alan, and he was everything that she ever wanted, to how he looked, to the fact that he was a successful entrepreneur. He's in his mid-30s, I think, at the time. He'd never been married. That was something important to her. He had the same taste in terms of culture, in terms of travel, loved to be around nature. So essentially for her, he ticked all of the boxes. And in her heart, she knew that something about him was different to all the others. He is the one. He is the one. And she remembered she would hear that in her mind, like, he is the one. This is it. So of course, when they met, the connection was instantaneous, deep and strong, and they would have regular meetings, daily meetings. Quite early on in the relationship as well, he had introduced her to his mother and sister. And later on down the line in the following months, she got to meet his 3-year-old daughter, and they had actually formed a special little bond together too. So it seemed that everything was really going in the right direction this time. However, her anxiety was rife from the get-go, and despite this, they still managed to keep it together for, I think it was like 8-9 months of their relationship. But of course, she did have this anxiety. She wanted to do things right. She wanted to do things differently. She was very conscious. So she delayed a lot of intimacy with him. And the reason that she did that was that she really wanted to make sure that he was there for her, that this wasn't just a physical thing. Because where her self-esteem was so low, she would actually jump into the physical with a lot of her previous relationships as some sort of means of acceptance, as some means of, I don't know, trying to make the connection stronger so that they'll love her, so that they'll stay. But this time she prolonged it, and Alan was completely fine and respectful of that. However, of course, she's got this diagnosis, this BPD, in the back of her mind, and her self-worth, like I say, was eating away at her. And they had talked, and this is another thing. This was like the icing on the cake now of obstacle upon obstacle. Yeah, it gets worse. He had talked quite passionately, quite fanatically since the get-go, that he wanted, in his future, he saw himself having another child. He really wanted that. And she was really worried that she couldn't measure up to this, because remember, that is what her parents made her believe. She would never measure up to anything. Now, this is what really broke things down for her, like I say, because one of his dreams was to have a family. Now what I didn't share with you about Dawn is that she is at this point in her early 40s, and she was told many years ago in her early 30s that it was going to be almost impossible for her to have children. And the reason for that was that she was diagnosed with a premature ovarian insufficiency. Now, that meant that doctors had told her that it was going to be medically impossible for her to get naturally pregnant. And for 10 years of her life, or more than a decade of her life, that had been the case. She had not been particularly careful. She had tried when she was in her previous relationship throughout the over 10 years that they were together. But she never got pregnant, not even once. So she was worried that Alan, discovering this, was going to leave. So she didn't tell him immediately, but when she did, she was very prepared for the worst, for him to leave. So of course, everything was fine. She's bracing for impact, but as it is, Alan's all right. He's stuck around. He's thinking positively. Maybe he thinks something's going to change and there's going to be other ways around it anyway. So anyway, life continues. Now, this is what happens with our assumptions. Our assumptions shape the world around us because life is your mirror. So certain chain of events start to unfold. Because remember everything I said to you in the beginning of this story about her and her childhood and her assumptions. I know those of you who are really studying and listen closely to this, you're being detective. You're extracting those assumptions that she's got. So, you know, she's not the priority and she doesn't feel safe in love. Anyway, I'll go into it in a bit. We're going to do it together. But what happens is, because she's not a priority, life orchestrates that Alan's ex partner, the mother of his daughter, essentially, she gets sick. And so that means that Alan is now having to tend to his daughter more regularly. Plus, he's got his own business, so work has been quite demanding. And Dawn couldn't help but feel pushed out in this time. Of course, when her plans with Alan were getting cancelled at the last minute, and she also noticed that the contact was lessening. You know, she realized that every day without fail, he would always start the morning with a good morning text to her. And even those began to get, you know, a bit delayed. It wouldn't be straight away in the morning. Instead, it would be after he'd arrived at work, and then it would be maybe into lunchtime. And so she would retaliate. She would set in the boundaries. She was like, no, I have to be prioritized. I want to be prioritized. And so she would argue with him. She would ask to take a break, or she would just block him. When she would get too overly frustrated, she would just block him so that he couldn't reach her. Essentially, methods that perhaps her dad had installed into her. Now, she wasn't ready as well, and I should mention that she never introduced Alan to her family, not even up to this point, even though they'd been together for months, because she had also said to Alan, like, look, I'm working up to that. She needed to be reassured. She didn't feel safe and secure in this relationship. And she was just like, yeah, if you want to meet my family and that, you're going to have to step it up. Now, she was convinced that applying this sort of pressure was going to make him up the game. But of course it didn't. And then it just further cemented the fact that she is not good enough, right? So what ends up happening? It's the inevitable. 9 months later, they end up breaking up. She blocks him again. And then later down the line, she decides to unblock him when things have settled, the dust has settled, and she reached out to him again, expecting that perhaps they could mend things. And of course, he responded that he couldn't handle it anymore. And then he just went silent. Now, she was really angry and upset about this because she had given it, you know, a few months. She had sent this really long apologetic email. She's trying to open up the lines of communication with maybe a light suggestion at the prospect that maybe they could mend things, maybe they could get back together. She realizes her mistakes. And he doesn't reciprocate, doesn't feel the same way. So it just made her feel even more angry because, of course, now she's rejected. She feels as though she means nothing to him because he doesn't even want to make the effort to try and fix things. That's how she's seeing it. That's how she's made to feel. And that was a really, really hard pill for her to swallow. So, of course, it's one of her biggest wounds. So he's turned down connection. He's gone ghost. And they remain in silence for months and months and months. And stay with me because I'm going to share the most incredible turnaround in all of this. And it's going to prove to you guys that when your hearts and your minds are in coherence with each other, you seriously can move mountains. So let's break down what we did because, you know, she gets recommended to me. We're talking about her situation. You know, it was actually from another coach that had recommended her. And this other coach is a friend of mine, big channel. I know many of you watch her as well. And I often get these more complex cases recommended to me by other coaches, particularly when there's a lot going on around mental health. And let's face it, her situation was quite complex, right? So, of course, the methods that she was given, trying to help her with an imaginal act, gifting her affirmations. It just wasn't working for her. It wasn't sitting well with her because the resistance as well was too strong, especially with the imaginal act. Imagine, like, go to your end, right? Simple enough. But when you're harboring that much resistance and anger and pain, it's not always easy to do. So there was a few things that we had to do. We did address her inner child. And I know I don't have a generic inner child. I don't believe that generic inner child hypnosis does any justice for anybody. Everyone's childhood is obviously very sacred, very special, very unique. That was something that we did engage in. I will say that. But for those of you at home who are doing this yourself, I'm going to recommend that you use the revision hypnosis, because if you have got painful experiences in the past, many people have been using that hypnosis. They have reported back to me incredible results from using it. It's the only one of its kind. Fantastic way to revise and to shift the meaning and the emotional charge that many of you have from your past experiences and your memories. So make use of it. It's the only one of its kind, like I say, that's actually using hypnosis NLP. And that's why the results are so incredible. So anyway, we then break down her story by bringing her subconscious beliefs to the surface and challenging it, which I always do. And we're going to do it here as well, because then you're giving yourself the undeniable proof of a new identity, and then it becomes a choice. You then get to choose your state. As it states in the Bhagavad Gita, and I love to quote these ancient texts, as you know, elevate yourself through the power of your mind and do not degrade yourself, because the mind is the friend and also the enemy of the self. The mind is the friend, but also the enemy of the self. And how many of you feel like your mind is your enemy at the moment, that it's just working against you? You can turn it all around. This is what we did with her, because her mind was her biggest enemy at that point. So we turned it around. We made her mind the ally, not the critic. And I do this with all my clients. And this is the reason why they change their state so fast. Those of you who work with me, you know, speak up, your experiences, share what it's like to change state. And it's also the reason why I get to go so deep dive with these case study breakdowns, because literally, you guys know, typing away like a frantic lunatic in all of my sessions, I write down so much of what is said, because my method of working is analyze your language. I always say to you guys, analyze your language. What are you saying? It's a fantastic indicator as to what your assumptions are and how you shape the world, your map, your story of the world. And then that way, you can then challenge those assumptions and break them down quite easily, quite effectively, even if they're assumptions that you've had for decades and decades of your life. This is what creates amazing, amazing results, because as Neville Goddard had stated, an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. And it's absolutely true. I see this all the time. So try not to think of this journey as I'm fixing myself, I'm healing myself, because that's implying that you're broken and we can end up fixing ourselves for the rest of our lives, right? See it as we're just basically trying to unprove the lies that are currently keeping you stuck in this undesirable reality right now. Okay. So a simple reframe like that can change everything. Now she obviously had numerous assumptions. There's many that you guys would have picked up on, but I'm just going to focus on the three main assumptions that had written Dawn's outcome. And I'm going to collapse each one of them for you so that you can learn this pattern, this way of working. Listen out, because maybe you're going to hear your own sentence in her assumptions anyway. And after this, you're going to also, I'm going to show you how simply and how powerful it is to disengage the anger. And that's what we did with her. We disengaged the anger and the resentment so that she could occupy her end state. But I'm going to do that after the assumption breakdown. So, number one, are you ready? Number one. One of her assumptions was essentially, okay, if I relax, if I don't control, then I'll be abandoned. How many of you actually feel that need to control everything, control the outcome, to try and text, to try and act a certain way for fear of abandonment? Now, many of you know, of course, if control worked, then you wouldn't be here watching this, right? So this is how I realized that control was such a big deal to her, because she would tell me about how she's refusing to be intimate with him. She's controlling the intimacy, right? She really had to make sure. She really had to make sure at first. She ended it first, or she would block him first whenever she was frustrated, trying to get some sort of reaction. So we then sort of challenged it. And I said to her, okay, name one rupture that happened with Alan whilst you were relaxed. Whilst there was a point, there was no testing, there was no blocking, there was no panic. Just give me one example. When you were relaxed. Okay, well, let's give you the evidence, right? You were getting the daily good morning messages for months. So you had a lot of consistency when you were in a good relaxed state. You had the family introductions within weeks. So you were evidently a priority, because you met his mom, you met his sister, you met his daughter quite early on as well. And he consistently resumed contact with you after you imposed those silences, after you imposed blocking. And he actually says at the end, and I haven't shared this bit yet in the story, but one of his concerns was that she didn't really want to see him, right? Which again doesn't show someone who was just being apathetic. But anyway, I haven't gotten to that bit of the story yet. I will. So when she showed up as her most calm self, the reality starts to regulate, and she's got experience of this. She's got experience now that, in fact, she didn't need to micromanage and control, because there was proof all around her that when she was calm, things actually were flowing very, very smoothly. It's when she started to micromanage everything that things started to go wrong. So, okay, we can install a new assumption, a new understanding that, right, the safer that I am, the safer that I feel, the safer that love is. And we would come up with, some counter arguments, some challenge questions. This is what I mean about the sort of challenge questions that reframe and put you into an alternative state. So if you are feeling like you're, one of these control freaks, like she was through her anxiety, in her particular case, I took the specifics of what had happened and I created a challenge for her. So I said to her, okay, if you're considering that, he's thinking that this is casual, and he's introducing you to his family, right? But that's a casual thing, apparently. Then why were there months and months of this, like I say, of this effort, of this continuously coming back every time you had a fight with him, every time you blocked him, every time all this returning after the silence, all of this introduction and integration into his life, into his family? Casual people don't make investments like that. And it really got her thinking another way. She's there kind of like wondering about, what do you call it? Like her hot and cold behavior. I had to confront her about that as well, because she was pulling back. As much as she was blaming him for it, she was doing that. She was exhibiting that. He was mirroring. And of course, that was her trying to regulate and control things again. But it wasn't working for her. And when she saw that again, it was all really eye-opening to her. Now we're going to assumption number 2. And assumption number 2 was about, as you know, there was a big worry for her about being used. So desire must mean I am being used, right? He's only interested in sleeping with me. So I must delay the intimacy to make sure that he's here for me and that he loves me. And this is actually deeper than that, right? So I said to her, okay, if desire equals disrespect and I'm using you, then why did he pour his heart out and keep engaging with you even after you set that physical boundary in the beginning, even after you stated that? Well, why did he continue to invest so deeply into you? I mean, he's saying he loves you, right? I didn't add that bit, you see, but he did. He opened up about how he felt about her. This doesn't sound like someone who is indifferent. He stayed around her orbit, even though he wasn't at that point getting the physical. He still chose to stick around her. You know, like I say, he's introducing to the family, and he's even talking about the future with her as well, and his passions and his dreams and his wants for another child or to extend the family. So it doesn't sound like someone who's being casual, right? And I put as much, like I say, this is kind of like, because this is a lot from my memory. I went a lot deeper with her, gathering a lot more evidence because her story went deeper. But for the sake of this video, I'm just giving you an idea of how we work through this so that you can apply it to yourself. So I got her to see that, okay, desire is an energy. It's a bonding. It's a seeking of closeness, you know? How about if we start to see it that way rather than something that is just a tool that's, you know, people just to use people, right? And that got her more comfortable with the idea of it, because she didn't realize she had been using the physical as a weapon for quite a while. Because she also thought too that if he cared a lot, he would be more consistent with her, and that he was being uncaring at the moment by avoiding contact with her too. There's another thing that came. So that made her feel that she'd been used, the fact that he went ghost in the end. But the thing is, like, his pattern was always going to match her state. And she didn't really give him a chance by the end of it. But like I said, we dealt with the anger, and I'll get to that bit in a moment. But let's look at assumption number 3. This, of course, was a very, very heavy one, because it was to do with her diagnosis, the 2 diagnoses, you know, with regards to the premature ovarian insufficiency and the borderline personality disorder. This had fused with her identity. These 2 labels became her identity. So yeah, she's like, okay, I have BPD. So of course that means I struggle with love, and I'm always going to have an issue with trying to have a healthy, committed relationship. And of course with POI, pregnancy is impossible. So I've had to, you know, I've just given up thinking that I could ever have kids and stuff. So she just identified with all of that and just made herself feel like a complete failure, made herself so detached from experiencing any of her dreams. But like I said, there was more to this story that I haven't been able to share yet. And there's more that I'm going to share, but there's more that I haven't been able to for, you know, time restraints. But I did say to her, okay, well, if that is your identity and if that is the ultimate truth, then how do you explain the moments that didn't fit? Because when she was talking to me, she had revealed that she was exhibiting symptoms that didn't fully stick with these labels. There was weeks, for example, with the borderline personality disorder, that she exhibited weeks of calm and connection. And there were days when it came to her physical body and this biology, there were days and times in her cycle she exhibited symptoms that, again, just didn't kind of match with these labels. So I was trying to get her to see that this was not like this, some sort of death sentence. She was stuck with it and that was it. I just wanted to see that she wasn't completely stuck, just to see the possibility of the alternative reality that's in existence. And by this time as well, this was around about session 3, where I did start to notice changes within her. You know, she wasn't stuck at all. Her language had shifted. She started to talk about how anytime she did have spirals, anytime she felt a bit low, she was bouncing back quicker. She didn't have as much expectation. She didn't feel desperate. She felt more stabilized. So in that sense, I could tell already that changes were happening. And I reiterated that to her, because I think this one with the labels was probably, as is understandable, probably the hardest thing for her to shift. But I got her to see that, okay, how about if we look at it, that labels describe your past state, not your future capacity. Remember, you know, I am the chooser. Okay. I'm not going to let the diagnosis choose for me. I am the chooser. And I got her to step into that state of power again. Now, like I say, in a moment, I'm going to show you this powerful little method that we use to turn her anger into peace. And basically what that did was that enabled her to manifest the incredible shift. This was the main thing for her. Because she held on to a lot of this anger and resentment, right? She felt that she had been rejected. She felt, he's not making the effort for me. I must not matter to him, right? I'm making the effort. Once again, it's all one-sided. He's used me, right? So this story that created such resentment for her. So, okay, we got her into this relaxed state and put her into a light trance. And you can do it yourself. Like I say, put yourself into a meditative state, whether you're staring at a candle flame, whether and relaxing your eyes whilst you're doing so, or whether you're doing a breathing exercise that just calms you down, calms your system down. And we got her to, first of all, I always acknowledge how people are feeling. I don't dismiss it. I don't say, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't be angry or you shouldn't be, never dismiss it. Remember, it's always acknowledgement before you can transmute anything. Acknowledgement is the key. I made a video about this. So we acknowledged her story. We said she was justified to feel angry. With that story playing in her mind, who wouldn't feel angry? And the reality seemingly confirmed her story. So we got to reframe it, and I got to, first of all, accept the anger and to thank it. Thank you, anger, for protecting me when love was feeling dangerous. Okay, thank you, anger, for protecting me, right? Love was feeling dangerous, you protected me. Now, your new job, because you've got to allocate the anger a new job. The new job is you're going to guard my boundaries, but you're not going to do it in such a way that punishes my connections. So I allocate it a new role, because you're never going to get rid of anger, just like you're never going to get rid of anxiety. We are all states now. All states of being exist within us now. You're never going to get rid of it. What you're doing is you're just diminishing it, phasing it out and occupying a different state. And in this trance state, I then posed some challenge questions to help her to reframe what was going on based on what she told me, like I say, about why she was so angry. And this is really, really powerful. I obviously went into it quite deep with her, but again, for the sake of just, you know, giving you some examples here so that you can apply it, this is essentially what I did. So one of the things I posed her based on what she told me was, okay, all right, if you were truly just a convenience, because again, she really, you know, she really placed herself. I always say when you're manifesting, you're not manifesting an SP, you're manifesting who you are in their world. Well, who she was in his world was just a convenience, just sort of used. So I said, okay, if you were truly just a convenience, then why would he introduce you to his mother and his sister within weeks of knowing you? If you're just a casual convenience. Another thing that stressed her was that she felt that she never mattered. So I was like, okay, well, if you never mattered, then why the months of good morning messages, trips away, days out together, special days out with the daughter in tow? Why would he allow you to bond with the daughter? You know, why you were the one who was keeping him a secret from your family, and you were the one withholding the intimacy. And yet he was openly sharing his life with you and the most important aspects of his life with you. So why do that if you're not important, especially when you weren't doing the same? I think that really got to her, the realization, because again, we get so immersed in our emotions, we don't realize what we're doing. Like I say, she was, as you and I know, very concerned about the physical, and started to say, okay, maybe that's all it was. So I was like, okay, if he only wanted the physical with you, then why pour his heart out to you? Why keep on engaging with you after the delayed intimacy and the number of times that you blocked him? Why is he as well talking about a future and having, you know, wanting kids and stuff? Why share all of this if he's only after the physical? Well, he's on the dating app, so go get the physical. You could get it anywhere. So anyway, after we'd engaged in this and I brought her out of the trance, I noticed that her tone had softened immediately. And the evidence that I had collated and had put to her to make this sort of robust identity sort of challenge shift, it made her old story just feel so ridiculous. It's not like the old story vanished and ceased to be, but it felt so ridiculous now that she had no resistance in accepting the new story. So she shifts her state within the session and she used the tools, and you did so well, darling, because I know she utilized all the tools that were available to keep on top of this, to keep accountable. And I realized, like I say, by session 3, a lot had impressed upon her subconsciously because her automatic language had changed. You know, she's talking about the loss of anger. There's no resistance. She's imagining her end result. She's feeling calm in general. There's no desperation. So like I say, this was all the proof that the shift had happened on a subconscious level, because whilst you're talking, the subconscious talks, you're not thinking about it. She gave away a lot of clues. So I was really happy about that. And that's how I knew at that moment things were already happening for her. Because you and I know when your state changes, then reality has to and will follow. Signs follow, they never precede. And what a beautiful sign she got next. Because this is what happened randomly. And like I said, I can't specify like how many months passed. I've lost track of time. But essentially, one random weekday, Dawn is going to a little local coffee shop and she's just picking up a few things. And when she's paid, she's turned around and she's met by Alan. He's standing there with his daughter. And of course, it's a little awkward. It's been quite a long time since they have had any interaction, any communication. He didn't respond to her messages. So there was that awkwardness, but she was feeling no anger, no resentment, no guard up. And they managed to talk. And it was actually the daughter playing her part, playing messenger. And the daughter invited Dawn to sit and have some cake with them. Well, how could Dawn refuse such a sweet offer, right? So they sit down, they engage, and they have a pleasant sort of coffee and cake afternoon. And then from what I recall, you guys went for a walk, didn't you, darling? So they went for a walk in the park, and that's when they managed to have quite an honest, open discussion about things. And this is where he kind of said a lot of the stuff to her that I'd picked up on, and I used against her as well to solidify her state even further, because that's the thing. You know, he really felt, and I'd said that to her as well, because that's what I'd assumed based on everything she told me, that he really felt that she didn't really want to see him. Even though she sent that message, the tone of the messages, the things that she said, like he still felt that she didn't really want to see him. And he was very much hurt by all the times that she would block him. He's not thinking, oh, okay, you know, she's angry. Well, he knows he's being blocked because she's angry. But essentially, it really hurt him every time that she did that. And he also said that he had tried on numerous occasions, he had tried his best to make her happy, but it just seemed that whatever he did, he got it wrong. Then, of course, the confirmation from the mirror of life, again, another confirmation sign, was that he did comment on how different that she seemed and that she just seemed lighter overall. So there you see the mirror of life reporting back, telling yourself, your higher self, basically that your identity has in that moment shifted. I already knew that it had for her, but there was like extra confirmation right there. So there was no grand plan going forward. I don't know the ins and outs precisely of what happened, but of course, through that meeting and through that open, honest conversation, they reconnected. A reconnection happened at a slow pace. They'd agreed to meet up with each other more. They started building up the contact. There were times where he had to cancel plans. She told me she's all right with it. She doesn't view that the same way again. Of course, she wouldn't. She is occupying a new state. And she dropped the need for any control. There was no micromanaging. There was no spiraling. There was no attempting to control anything, because as soon as we attempt to control anything, that is essentially consciousness pretending that it is powerless. And it isn't, as you know. So this is how we knew that she was occupying and speaking and acting and walking and talking from this new regulated state. As Florence Scovel-Shinn says, faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. She already knows this is a done deal. And so she's acting quite naturally from that state. And she did so, so well from that state of, we're together, we're coming together. Now, she remained stable, like I say. That was a stark contrast to the old version of self. None of the fear when there was cancellations, none of the fear when there was a delay. Silence to her now didn't mean some form of punishment and rejection like it would from her father, for example, whenever he went silent on her. No, she didn't take it as that. She saw it as part of their growth. She saw it as, okay, he's going to be in touch. It's not the end. Now, something even more miraculous occurred during this time. And Todd, I've got to have a drink before I deliver this. There's a reason why I really postponed sharing this, because she went through a hard time. They managed to conceive. Unfortunately, she didn't carry through. She didn't carry that pregnancy through. But, and I've got goosebumps while I say this, but it was the miracle. And I'm starting to feel emotional. Sorry. Because I know how desperately she wanted it. Like, I worked with her for quite a while, you know, and, guys, sorry about this, guys. So she conceived, but she didn't carry it through, but she still, and what an energy, what a spirit. You inspire me so much, because, she held so strong, during that, and she still saw it as a massive blessing. And yes, she was heartbroken, but the fact that she could conceive at all when in all of this time she couldn't was just was nothing short of a miracle. I mean, that was something she had written off for the longest time and didn't know it was possible. And like I say, because we disempowered those labels so much, she's the one who accepted it. I can't even take the credit for this. No, I will just say that I got her to see things a different way. But that's what I mean. She got me questioning things, because even I wasn't too sure. You know, sometimes I still think to myself, I think, gosh, I think I still have some limitations. I hear all these incredible things. That's why I'm like, share your success stories. You inspire me. You remind me, as well as the community, of what is possible. But anyway, I followed up with her recently. And I want to share with you guys, like I say, her message. And in her message, she had said the words, "We did it." And the words "we did it," the meaning of that is that they're having a baby. So she made it. And she said to me that, and I remember when she said that, God, what the hell is wrong with me? I remember when she said that, because she had said to me, she didn't lose heart. The fact that she managed to conceive, even though she lost that pregnancy, she took that as a sign. That's why she didn't stay in grief for too long. That's why she didn't stay in desperation or depression, because of the way that she saw it. It wasn't a closed door. It was a sign of what was to come. And she was right. And of course, you know, I don't know. This story had to be shared now. Where we could. She was far enough along that it was safe enough to. I can't even speak anymore. But basically, it was safe enough to just share this amazing, amazing news, so you can see how things can turn around. Why I was so excited to share this story with you, and of course, why I prolonged sharing it, because I was excited to share this story when she had conceived the first time. I thought that was incredible. That's the miracle. That's what I'm going to share with everyone. But of course, there was more to come. See, things always happen at the right time, at the perfect time. So massive congratulations to you, sweetheart. Thank you so much for you guys who made it this far in the story. I know that, again, there was a lot to take in. I try my best to condense everything, and I don't know, it just carries on and on. But I love you all for sticking around, for supporting each other. Thank you, everybody. Those of you who have emailed me about one-to-ones, like I say, I'm really getting so many emails, and I'm trying my best to respond to all of you, because I book and I respond to everyone individually. I'm not very tech savvy, so haven't automated anything in that sense. So please bear with me. Give me at least 5 days to a week to respond. I love you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.